In September 2001, I was working at a think tank in Arlington, Virginia on national security issues, including terrorism. On September 11th, a gorgeous blue sky day, I arrived at work around 8:45, and as I went to enter the garage, the car ahead of me didn't move despite the garage gate having gone up and down. I naturally honked, wondering what could have been wrong that the car didn't move. In shock, the driver rolled down our window and looked back at me and said, "The radio is reporting a plane crashed into the World Trade Center." Immediately, I thought of a small Cessna-like plane, went ahead and parked and headed up to my office. Arriving in the lobby, I immediately realized that thought was wrong. The wall of TVs were aglow in the conference room. The phones were ringing like mad, as they would continue to all day as the facts of what was taking place unfurled. As you see, one of our terrorism scholars had written one of the few books on bin Laden prior to 9/11. He became very much in demand that day. I remember watching in horror with my colleagues and in disbelief as the second plane flew into the towers and then the Pentagon. We could see the smoke in the distance from our Arlington office, learning later that day that a team member had the plane fly over them as they sat in traffic that morning. Immediately, I reached out to a friend working in the Pentagon, and like so many that day, were unable to reach her. Days later, she told me her harrowing tale of running from a fireball that had engulfed the area she was working just moments before. And just like the rest of the nation, I fell in shock to the floor, watching the towers crumble. That day was life-altering.
When I look back and think of 9/11, 2001, where we were, what we were doing, and how that really turned out to be one of the worst days in our country, one of the worst things that happened in our nation, to think that our homeland was attacked by foreign actors. When I think back also where I was on those days, I was at the NEMA conference. It was being held in Big Sky, Montana. We had a majority of the state directors were there, as well as a lot of the FEMA leadership at the time. And that morning, I remember waking up and turning on the television, because it was much earlier in the morning there, and seeing on the news and seeing what I thought was a horror movie playing instead of the news. And really what that meant for us as a emergency management profession and where it has taken us. But the first thing, I was very impressed. Obviously, emergency managers, we have a passion for taking care of things when it's the time of greatest needs for others. And so really banded together. We set up an emergency operations center there in the hotel, took down everything from the conference, and everybody went to work.
The biggest, I think the biggest challenges that day are as much as you find in any situation like that. Simply the unknown, the lack of information, the lack of clarity, the lack of understanding of what's going on, the fog of war, if you will, the hours that it took to truly understand what had happened and what the threat was. That was the biggest challenge that day. And it's going to be in any future event like that as well. Simply connecting the dots and putting all the pieces of intelligence and information together so that we can respond accordingly. I think it is, one of the takeaways from that day for me, and I think for the nation as a whole, is that we can no longer fail to imagine what is possible. We can no longer put something aside as too hard or too complicated or too messy to solve. When we go about considering how to prepare ourselves for future events, we can no longer just do what we're capable of doing. We have to understand what is in the realm of possibility and plan for that. So that's, I think, one of the things for me is we can't just choose something further down the threat scale and settle on a plan for that and hope that the worst doesn't occur, because the worst is going to occur at some point, and we need to be ready for it.
What ways did 9/11 change the emergency management profession? And I think what it really did for us, as we were quite focused on those natural disasters, those things that happen, those weather events, the hurricanes, the fires, the floods, the tornadoes, snowstorms, those things that happen on a annual basis routinely. We're used to responding to those. But I think once our country actually got attacked by foreign actors and we had our security actually being tested and those resources and what we had in place, And so 9/11 really brought to the forefront those things that we need to think beyond. We needed to get outside of our comfort zone from the natural disasters and being really looking at homeland security in greater depth and detail and how we coordinate that. It goes beyond what the military assets are. It goes beyond what communities had ever thought about before. And I think it really brought us together to really think about it. It was the formation of Department of Homeland Security and how that changed the structure within the state systems, and also as far as disasters and how we look at things. So I really think it helped us to broaden the scale of what it is we do and what it is we need to think about and those things that we need to be prepared for.
It's hard for me to fathom that we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of it. It seems so fresh to me and so immediate. And I take that as a good sign because it's something that I think drives our responses, our preparedness, our activities, our ideals, our plans every single day.